Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you do subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. I'm delighted today to be joined by Brian Froom, Information Security Manager at Tata Steel, Biro, Senior Manager, Risk, Security and Controls at Turnkey Consulting, and Paul Lloyd-Smith, UK and Ireland Domain Advisor to the Office of the CFO at SAP. So welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you for having us, Craig.
Hi. Thank you.
And in today's episode, we're going to be diving back into the topic of cybersecurity in SAP. Now, if you didn't listen to the first episode we covered, go back 2022, have a listen to that episode as well. But today, we're going to be outlining the challenges faced when moving from an on-premise environment to the cloud. But just before we drop into that, I'd just like to ask you guys a quick question, if I may. What's your favourite festive meal? Now, while maybe you have a think about that, for me, it's Christmas dinner, hands down, with plenty of wine, of course. You know, maybe finish with then cheese and pork, wherever. So, as you can see, a boozy lunch is where I'm leaning towards. So, Philip, what's your favourite festive meal?
So, as you might not know, but I'm actually Hungarian, and we do have a very specific meal, specific food that we have, which is a very, very interesting take on stuffed cabbage, which is stuffed with rice and meat. And my grandmother had like an amazing recipe for it, which has been passed down over almost a century now between multiple mothers in the family, and I have to be honest, that's what I'm looking for the most. It's going to be amazing.
Wow, fantastic! Well, who says you don't learn anything on this podcast? You know, absolutely fantastic. We'll have to hunt you down for that recipe, Brian.
I suppose, Craig, I'm like you. It'll be the full works, you know, the full turkey dinner with all the trimmings and that, and then finishing it off with a luxurious Christmas pudding with a very heavily brandied sauce.
Thank you, and Paul.
Yeah, I'll go for something different as well. I think for me, you know, Christmas Day, Christmas lunch. Is always me cooking. So it's a difficult thing to enjoy after you've been in the kitchen for nearly 3 hours. So for me, it's probably the snacks that build up to Christmas dinner, because I can actually enjoy those while I'm cooking. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that'd probably be my favourite part of the festive meals, is that those pigs in blankets, or the prawns with the chili dip, or those little sort of things that you create as you build up to Christmas lunch.
Oh, fantastic. So it's the food, but also the time in preparing, ready to feed everybody.
Absolutely.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, well, thanks for that, guys. Really do appreciate that. And, okay, so getting back to our main topic, and I suppose it's fair to say that cybersecurity is a topic that often hits the headlines. You see major incidents here and there, and potentially becoming more common in the media, and more costly, of course. And given the sensitive information that can reside on SAP, protecting these systems from cyber criminals is obviously critical. And as more and more organizations move part or all of their SAP estates to the cloud, what I'd like to talk to you guys about is, what are the different cybersecurity challenges people face? And just before we get into that, if we could, I just feel it might be nice to introduce yourselves to the audience and your roles. So, Brian.
Yeah, okay. Well, my role within Tata Steel is Information Security Manager, which is a wide sort of reaching title. It means I cover everything from information security right the way down to doing e-learning courses for them, making sure people are awareness, running fake phishing campaigns and everything of that ilk, as well as looking after the IT users who use our SAP system. So those users who would have heightened privileges, should we say, more than a general user on the system. I'm also, for some of you who've probably listened to the previous podcast and they will know that I'm the current sitting chair of the Security and Control Forum for the user group. I've been a volunteer for far too many years now in that. So I'm there. But we're hoping to have had two of my co-chairs on the call today, but apparently they're a bit shy of the podcasts. And but as I say, because I am gearing up for retirement, so.
Okay, I wouldn't say far too long at all, Brian, but thank you for everything, and thank you for that. Philip.
So in my role at Turnkey, my focus is mainly around advising our clients on making their security posture as fixed and stable as possible. This brings with it a lot of potential activities around red teaming, penetration testing, and of course, bringing it more into the direction of purple teaming, helping the defensive organization understand what the output of any kind of potential vulnerabilities, findings during any kind of intrusions could be. I'm working with our clients to help them understand the value of their data, and then based on that, make an informed business decision to choose what tools and what processes would work best for their specific organization, their specific systems that they're trying to protect from cyber threats.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So as part of the UK&I domain advisory team, really my role is to understand customer challenges, in detail. So a lot of what I do is talking to customers about I think the key areas of concern they have, whether that be as of halfway through this year across the sort of finance portfolio, but also risk, compliance, and also security. So it's really having those conversations to understand how can SAP help, or how can our partners assist, whether that be through SAP technology or SAP services, or maybe through our partner solutions or services as well. So that's what I really do day to day.
Thanks for that, Paul. And just while I'm with you, if I may, could you please give us an overview of some of the security challenges SAP users face, particularly in relation to cloud migrations? Yeah,
sure, Brian. So I think, for me, in the conversations I have with customers, it's really around, I suppose, the SAP portfolio, should we say. So I don't really get involved in the sort of the hosted security challenges or the network challenges, should we say. It's more around the actual, the systems themselves that the customers are going to be deploying. So for me, there are three key areas that I talk to customers about, and that's user security, data security, and also their applications security. So by that, I mean, it's still the case, I think, that, a lot of organizations focus in on their ERP environment when it comes to access governance. And I think, especially external audit are really looking now for organizations to have cross-system segregation duties. So they're, really having that effective governance of their users and the access that those users have, both across their ERP and also their cloud applications. So that's a lot of my time is spent talking to customers about how we can help give them that, full governance across their SAP landscape. The second piece is really around the data and how they can ensure that, especially when it comes to things like, for example, masking data or logging who has access to screens. That's very important for a lot of organizations, especially, for example, where, we're finding this a lot where organizations are trimming down, should we say, and really having People, especially say within finance or within a shared service environment, having to cover a number of different roles where they're, exposed to data which is fairly critical to the organisation, or where it's sensitive information, say, PII data, for example. So it could be finance data, bank account balances, or bank details generally, people's names, addresses, contact details, even in HR data as well. Sort of the remuneration of staff within the organisation. And those pieces of information are often in screens where, there are other areas of that screen that need to be accessed as part of a role, but where specific information in that screen does not need to be exposed to that particular user. Because what you're doing then is you're putting the risk back onto the user, but also it's a risk, therefore, of the organisation as well. So how can we help to mitigate that particular exposure of critical or sensitive data? Another area. And then the application side as well. So the third piece is how can organisations better understand potential threats occurring within the application layer? And I think, that's where we're having a lot of conversations now around, the threat detection. So understanding when does something look like an anomaly? When you're having multiple attempts at access which are being blocked, or, it's obvious that somebody's trying, or something or someone is trying to access a particular user account or a certain system, and we can identify that in near real time to enable things to be changed, or things to be locked down to avoid any potential intrusion. So those are the three key areas, Brian, that we tend to have conversations with our customers around.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Paul. And Philip, is there anything you can add there, perhaps, that you also see from your customers?
So it's always a bit of a challenging situation because, let's be honest, everybody, all clients, all organizations need a different approach to cloud, to migration, to the security of their own systems and their own data, the crown jewels, let's call them. So obviously it requires a lot of work into even understanding what those crown jewels are. So the support that you mentioned, Paul, with making sure that the coverage of those tools and those processes is in place during and after the migration, potentially even before that, requires the basis of understanding, what it is exactly that I do actually need to protect, why it is that, why those are the most business critical parts of my data and my systems. And making sure that is the implementation and the choice of cloud service, the choice of security tooling around it is based on that understanding that customers receive. And there's a lot of difficulties and potential risks that can come up specifically during cloud migrations. But I'll just let someone else talk about those later.
Thank you. And Brian, if I may, just to build on that, I wondered if you could perhaps reflect on how things have changed since we recorded the last podcast back in 2022.
Yeah, I was thinking of that, Craig, earlier on, like say, because it's almost it's 2 years since we did the last one. I think there's some positives, and I think there's also some negatives. I think on the positive side, there are a lot more tooling out there now from the vendors and affiliates and on there, which will help us to look and check and specifically around. I think one of the things I mentioned in the podcast back in 2022 was customized code. And there's a wealth of tooling out there now which can check that code has been developed correctly. There's no backdoors and various things on that. On the negatives, then we seem to have, you've got a lot more systems now in the cloud. There's a perception that by moving everything to the cloud, we've lost a bit of control. And by that, I mean, when you were on premise, you were in control of doing the updates. You were in control of patching. If you're using a SaaS party who's managing your infrastructure in the cloud on there, they are probably going to be doing that. And it's whether how do you ensure that they like say, one of the things we talked about in 2022 was, if you customize code, applying the patch might stop that customized code working. So if you've got a third party now who's doing the patching for you because it's a cloud, somebody's looking after your cloud environment, how do you ensure yourself that you're not impacting your existing code that's on there? And the other thing as well is, one of the negatives with everybody moving to the cloud and that there is a very big increase in fake phishing attacks, and very more crafted that it's very difficult to spot. They can be sometimes very good, well crafted that you couldn't tell, a fake fish from a real fish, and that again then is an additional risk to us in there that whilst the businesses are moving, so are the bad actors moving, and whilst there's tools out there for businesses to use, there's a lot more tools out there that these bad actors can be using. You just would think of AI. We've seen instances where bad actors are using AI to craft, the phishing email on there, which makes it difficult to spot. Then it's looking like a real email.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the phishing one, because it's back to that human element, isn't it, and that awareness and training of your people to understand it. The amount I've been sent from our team of things I've purportedly asked them to do around paying of bills and sending money and this, that and the other is very interesting. Although the last one was a bit poor, I felt, because it was all in American English, so it definitely wasn't me. But on that point, just going back to your other point there, Brian, about the move to the cloud, I suppose the flip side of that, what a lot of vendors will see is in the cloud and the upgrades and everything is more controlled because they know what's going into it. It's ring-fenced, etc. On, I suppose, your coding perspective, I don't know, Philip, Paul, if you have anything to add in that regard.
So actually, before I answer that, may I just very quickly go back to something that you mentioned, Brian, right? You mentioned the challenge of the perception of lack of visibility and control on your system. And this is something that I see very, very often with our clients as well, this understanding of losing visibility by handing over systems into the cloud. And there are partial situations where I do potentially even agree, because considering a situation where a client hasn't had a very robust monitoring tool process implemented for their system, they go into the cloud, they assume that they will just hand over the system as is and don't assume that they have access to robust monitoring. They might think that they will not have visibility on security incidents happening in their systems because they will not have visibility on the back end of their systems. So what many people need to understand in these situations is that the positives far outweigh the negatives of a cloud implementation. However, you need to be aware that to retain that transparency that you require, you will have to think about implementing additional tools and additional monitoring capabilities as part of your migration to the cloud. So just specifically to work on that perception of I'm just losing everything. Paul, please.
Yeah, sure. Just on that piece as well, I think, what we're seeing and what has changed for me since the last podcast, I think is the understanding from SAP of what our customers require. And I think, when we last talked about, these topics on the previous podcast, SAP was still in that situation where we were engaging with customers who were, looking to adopt systems which were on-premise, say, or talking about on-premise solutions. And we're thinking about moving to cloud or starting to dip their toe in the cloud world. And, what we've seen is that's such a shift now from on-premise to whether it be private cloud or public cloud. But what that's also brought about, I think as well, and I think this is globally, I think there's something like 3 million outstanding roles open for cybersecurity specialists. So it's obviously increased that requirement for people who are skilled around cybersecurity to help to monitor and mitigate risks around cyber risk. But that change in landscape, that change in the adoption of cloud applications has also, I think, the feedback we've had from customers has brought around this requirement for, can SAP help us to secure our systems, but as a service offering, authored by a partner, rather than us actually having to manage the systems ourselves, because there's that realization that there just aren't those skilled staff out there to, monitor SAP systems to the depth and the level of security that they need. So that's been a real change for me since 2022 is, how can we help organizations to give them that security over their SAP systems, whether that be through SAP supplying as a service to that customer, or whether it be through a partner assisting but using an SAP solution to provide that service. Where those organizations, the Security Operations Center, maybe they don't have people who are, they might have, people who are managing an enterprise SIEM solution, their enterprise cybersecurity solution, but they don't have the specific skill sets required to understand what they need to be asking the questions of, or what attack patterns they need to be using to monitor their SAP landscape. So that's been a big change for me, is organizations not, owning the solution themselves in-house, but using, security solutions as a service almost.
Thank you.
We know our community, but we don't know yours yet. Why not share the benefits of your UK&I Sub membership with those who don't know about us? The UK&I Sub referral scheme rewards you for helping to grow and develop our community. You can check out the link in the description to find out more about how you can get involved. Terms and conditions apply. We hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And whilst we're on kind of the positive aspects, I do believe that there are certain arguments that actually moving to the cloud can actually bolster your cybersecurity. So I don't know whether, Philip, you have any comments around that?
Very much so. So there's just almost infinite things that really a properly implemented cloud move can give you. Just beginning with the fact that just physical data center security is already there. You have high availability systems, immediate disaster recovery, automated load balancing, automation in general on the almost OS level, VM level, on anything that you might require your systems to be capable of. My personal favorite is that in a situation, and like specifically controlled cloud situation, like for example, RISE for SAP, you generate a situation around all systems that you can have the availability of a security operations center that's specifically streamlined onto the environment. You don't need to necessarily look for a service outside of it that might not be SAP savvy, right? That's one of the bigger challenges that we've been facing with a lot of our clients, is that, okay, we might have a support from a security operations center for most of our non-SAP tools, but then when it comes to SAP, it's like hands off. We're not willing to do anything with it because it's challenging, it's complex, it has a lot of high value data on it. And other things, like, for example, just the fact that moving to the cloud in many situations gives you out-of-the-box support for regulatory compliance requirements, such as ISO 27000, C5, anything. So the list is infinite.
Thank you. So when we look at that, so Brian, if I may come to you on this, is so when organizations are making the shift to the cloud from on-prem configurations, we've already heard quite a number of positives. What do you feel are the kind of the security benefits of moving to the cloud?
Benefits, I would say, Craig, is that it's more in sort of the one place, as Philip talked about. You got the idea of a security operations center, which is monitoring and reporting on all your systems on there. So you've got that, and it's running against one place, against that one cloud system there. So it's probably more effective than running across 2 or 3 different systems. And again, I think with benefits of moving to the cloud is it's scalability. So if you did want to scale up and go bigger and better, then you can do it. It's far easier on the cloud to do that. From a cyber perspective, I think it's difficult because things are changing so quickly. The area of the world is changing so quickly. You've got the likes, as I mentioned earlier on, the likes of AI coming in there, which is another thing to consider. And also you got the various regulations coming in, we are expecting UK SOX at some point in the near future, but we've also already got GDPR on your personal data. So it's looking at and making sure that who you choose for your cloud service provider, has the right sort of diligence and controls available to put in place to allow you to meet these regulations and these requirements that you have to. One of the biggest struggles we're having at the moment within Tata Steel in moving our ERP system into the cloud is we're not doing things by half. Not only are we moving it from NL, we're moving it straight to Tata Steel, to our parent company in India, to be hosted on a cloud system, hosted and run by them. So that gives us no end of problems with the fact that luckily it's our main production system that we move in there. So the PII on there is limited, and it's not the sensitive PII, but we've still got to gain those assurances then that we've got a company that's, our PII is now no longer going to be sat in the EEA. So we have to meet all the legal requirements allowing us to have that PII there processed and managed in there. And if I'm honest, culturally, I think some of the cultures don't actually get PII yet, and why there's a need to have so much control over it. And again, that's another challenge we see. So I struggle sometimes to see perhaps I'm too old school. I've been brought up with ERP and on-premise systems, or most of my career, even when I was an IT auditor auditing, it's always been on-premise on there. And perhaps I'm too set in my ways and that in there and on there. But I do sometimes struggle to see what the real benefits are.
Thank you. And just on that, one question back for you for our listeners, if I may, Brian. What's PII?
Personal identifiable information. So basically name, email address, your SAP ID, could even be your IP number, is all classed under the General Data Protection Act as personal information. Which we need to control and make sure that we don't cause a data breach by letting it out in the big bad world.
Thank you. And so just looking at what Brian was talking about there, and that move to the cloud and on-premise, and I suppose there'll be a lot of people like what Brian is purporting to be like, a lot of history in the on-premise world and moving to the cloud. So, Paul, I just wondered, how does SAP go about updating their cyber defences that they have baked into the products and patching potential issues, etc., to help their customers migrate the cloud?
Sure, good question. Thanks, Brian. So I think we have a 3-pillar approach when it comes to security, especially in the cloud. So that those 3 pillars are build securely. run securely, and act securely. So by that we mean that the solutions that we're looking to develop go through a secure development lifecycle. We work with leading cloud service providers to secure by design the cloud environments those applications and systems are going to sit in. But we also look for additional solutions beyond the core security elements, so we can help organisations to elevate and their overall security posture. So if that's from a build perspective, I think we can share more detail. There's a lot of information on the websites. But the second pillar around run securely, that's about where we look to automate and prevent using detective controls in the cloud environment. So I think there's somewhere in the region of 2,000, 2,300 controls which are run over our controls, our cloud environments, to help to mitigate risk and cyber risk. But also we have around 130 audits which are carried out annually, again, around our cloud applications. In terms of the more so how we act securely, that's really to your point earlier, I think, Craig, that you mentioned around employees being educated in how to act securely within their work life, also within their personal life as well. Many people bring your own device to work, where they have work and their own personal information on those phones or those devices. So educating people, that's something we do at SAP very well, is that we're throughout the year we have updates, we have notifications, we have to read policies and give feedback that we have done that. So that's really important. That as you mentioned earlier on, that could be a critical weakness for any organisation, is that human element. But also how we work with our customers. So we're constantly feeding information to our customers, and also hearing back from customers how we need to be changing and updating our security capabilities aligned to those emerging threats. And then also we work very closely with our partners, whether that be the cloud service providers or just generally with our vast partner network, getting feedback from them, understanding what they're seeing, what challenges they're experiencing, and us as well feeding back information to them. So as I say, that's our three-pillar approach to security: is the build securely, run securely, and act securely. And over above that, we have our Cyber Fusion Centre. So the Cyber Fusion Centre really is that sort of environment where we've got many hundreds, I think, of employees who are focused completely on cybersecurity. They're looking at things like security engineering. They're looking at security incident response, attack service reduction, red team operations. I think you mentioned that earlier, Philip. Project management, and also cyber threat intelligence. So that Cyber Fusion Centre really is our intelligent team who are really finger on the pulse of what's happening in the security world.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Paul. Appreciate that. And Philip, do you have anything to add from your experience to what Paul was talking about there?
So, not specifically from the SAP. I don't think I could say anything more from the SAP specific approach, obviously. But in general, what I can say is that is the direction that we personally recommend our customers to go as well, into a migration process. It's very important to have that process of implementing controls already in the build process, then the run process, and then the acting. And another really big favorite, and I love that you mentioned this, Paul, my really big favorite is just generally the user and third-party risk. So many organizations just forget about that part. They implement incredibly powerful security controls into their organization systems and processes, but then forget about the training of the human. Making the human up-to-dately understand what is currently out there. As you mentioned, Brian, as well, at the beginning, AI, the situations that AI can generate in the current just right now, today. It's not tomorrow. It's right now. It's been there for a while now. You can make deep fake videos of the organization's CEO, telling people to do whatever they want, and most people wouldn't even recognize it because the technology is so far ahead. So we need to be able to make sure that the employees, the people who are responsible for using all the assets of the organization, are aware of all of these threats. And having that threat intelligence regularly updated and basically given to the employees, to the people, because it changes on a daily basis. That's what makes it so scary in the end, that it literally changes on a daily basis. I've been called by my father, who was not my father, but sounded like my father on the phone. Unfortunately, that happened too. So someone had access to his phone. We since changed his phone and everything, but someone had access to his phone, started recording, gave it to an AI model, and then they started making calls with the phone number with his voice. It's incredibly scary. And that is just required to be understood by everybody. Paul, you wanted to come back on that?
Just really, yeah. I mean, I think, one of the areas where I think we can all help each other is, through engagement with customers and what they're seeing as well, Philip. And, we do have a number of capabilities where, we can listen to customers. Those are the guys that are really on the, the front line, so to speak, witnessing these sort of, attacks and changing, attack vectors and so on. I think, for me, on this call, it'd be great for me just to share that, we do have, three key ways in which customers can engage with SAP. So that's via the customer advisory board, the customer connect program, but also the continuous influence program as well. So if customers are keen to share, like you did there, Philip, with these experiences, that we can be better made aware as well, then I think those three areas, if customers wanted to, and SAP users wanted to search for those on the internet and just Google search them, the customer advisory board, customer connect program, and the continuous influence program, we are really keen to hear from customers about what experiences they're seeing. The more information we can get, the better.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and especially the influencing programs that kind of we work with SAP on, including the continuous improvement, customer connection, the customer engagement initiatives. All of those are available to customers and UK SUG members to engage in. I do recommend them. Really do leverage them and have your say in the future development of SAP solutions. And I think that's so valuable. And that's one of the things I think where SAP is quite unique in that regard, in working with customers and our members and developing the solutions going forward. So, gentlemen, as we come towards a close, I'd just like to ask you to leave a final word, if you may, for our listeners on, I suppose, your top tips for organisations migrating to the cloud and how they can remain secure while doing it. If there's things that perhaps we haven't covered today, just to leave some final words, if you may. So, Brian, if I may start with you.
Yeah, I've had thoughts on this, Craig, and I think, as Philip and Paul have both touched on, I think one of the key thoughts would be you must have robust monitoring, and by that I mean like the SOC, Security Operations Center style monitoring, where it's monitoring real time what's happening on your SAP landscape, so that the minute something different or something changes on there, you're made aware that something has happened and something's changed. Then following on from that, it is a well practiced and well followed sort of incident process, because if you did get compromised, then you need to know what you need to do. Can you separate? Can you segregate the bit that's been compromised from the rest? Carry on. What's your process? Who do you need to involve? Do you need to involve, is there a breach of personal data there? Do you need to involve legal? Because bear in mind in the GDPR, you have 72 hours to report if it's a data breach relating to a living individual. So the clock starts ticking fairly quickly on that. And then the third one, which I think shouldn't be difficult, but in my long and illustrious career as an IT auditor and as a security specialist, is documentation. Documentation of code that's been built. What is there on there? You're having documented processes and procedures. You're having documented controls that somebody can say, these are the controls, these are what we must implement. So I think those would be my three key takeaways.
Thank you. Philip.
So what I would say would be the most important things to look out for during a migration into the cloud is, I'm going to make it very quick. Don't migrate vulnerable code. That's the first thing. Make sure that's fixed before it goes into the cloud. You don't want SQL injections and backdoors in your cloud immediately once you move. Don't migrate any data that is unencrypted. Again, a thing that many organizations forget about, that data that is not in rest but in transit can oftentimes be very easily hijacked while in the move to the cloud. And implement a proper vulnerability management tool and alerting threat detection tool, be it whatever it is. It can be ETD, it can be security bridge, can be perhaps whatever, it doesn't matter, but have it implemented and have a proper process for that, for managing it, and have the monitoring in hand, because it's very important to have it once you're in the cloud.
Thank you. And final words to you, Paul.
So for me, I think, I'm engaging with customers, all the time around transformations. And I think it's getting much better, by the way. The security flag is being raised a lot earlier in the conversation. But I think that's the key learning for me, is that there are still instances where an organisation is looking to move to S/4HANA, whether it be with Rise, maybe with Grow, but the security question, the security flag isn't being raised early enough in the conversation. I think sometimes that can catch out both the customer, maybe the partner, and also SAP. We're getting quite down the line towards an acquisition or to, moving ahead with an implementation, and it can get quite late in the day when a security concern is raised. So I think for me, that's the key takeaway from this. For me, is to help organisations to ensure that they raise that security question. I mean, as part of every S/4HANA Rise conversation now that we're having with customers, there is always a technical assessment which is delivered by an SAP Cloud architect, and that's part of our process. So that should help to mitigate that, but still that can be fairly late in the process. But raising that question early, because we have teams of people now, we have the whole of the office of the CISO SAP, who can engage with you to ensure that you have the right information, you're educated, your concerns are mitigated around that move to whether it be private cloud or public cloud. So that's my first point. The second point would be around the Trust Center. I know we spoke about this on the previous podcast, but it's recently been updated. So the SAP Trust Center is your single source for all the information around your SOC reports or any SLAs or the latest concerns, but also about the key activities that SAP are taking to help you as a customer or help organizations to mitigate cyber risk. So that Trust Center would be a key resource. There's also a My Trust Center site now where specific customers and partners can have their own level of access. So that's the second thing. I'd just like to put as an addendum to that as well. We've also, as of 2 days ago, so this is really hot off the press, so it's great timing for this podcast, for utility organisations, for critical infrastructure, for government entities in the UK, SAP, as of this Tuesday, the 12th of November, have gone live with our SAP sovereign cloud environment in the UK. So that's huge news. And this has been some time coming, but it's fantastic that's now live. So organisations who need to have their systems residing within UK borders, that's now available for customers to engage with. That's fantastic news. And the third thing would be, if in doubt, reach out. So we're here to help, whether it be through connecting directly with SAP or with our partners. We're here to help answer questions or to advise as to good practice. But if there's any doubts at all around security, then we're absolutely here to be contacted.
Thank you. Paul, Philip, Brian, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. This has been very interesting conversation for me in understanding this very important topic. And for our listeners, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. Please make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay secure.